Hello, my name is Sara Harberson, and I'm America's College Counselor. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. This is a rapid-fire Q&A. It's Ask America's College Counselor. So if you have a question about the college admissions process, you can ask it in the comments section below the live feed. I'm going to be answering those questions and trying to answer as many of them as I can tonight. We are streaming live on both of my Facebook pages for Sara Harberson and Admissions Revolution. And actually, we have years of Facebook Live sessions if you want to check them out on my Facebook pages or my websites, admissionsrevolution.com or saraharberson.com, where you can find my blog. If you want to work one-on-one with me or you're interested in joining Application Nation, we'll also post the links in the comments section to help you out. But a lot of you follow my blog already or get the annual timeline or the junior guide. These are all free resources that you can download from my sites, and we'll also include those links. But I'd like to start answering questions as quickly as I can. If you have a question, you can type it into the comments section below the live feed. If you want to mention if you're a parent or a high school student, feel free to do that as well. I love to hear from all of you where you're coming. We have families from all over the country, all over the world watching these Facebook Live sessions, so give me some shout outs and some questions. I know those high school seniors are anxiously awaiting some of their decisions, and I would say that the more selective colleges are going to be notifying throughout the month of March especially, so be ready for those decisions. Sometimes you will find out your decision on the admissions portal, so make sure you have access to that and your password information for that. Sometimes you still get an old-fashioned admission packet in the mail, but it really varies from college to college. So March is going to be busy with those decisions. If you're a senior, April's going to be busy with you going back to visit some of those colleges before you make a final decision. And May 1st is when students need to notify a college or university if they're going to be enrolling. So we've got a busy spring in front of us. But I know those freshmen, sophomores, and juniors have questions about class schedules, what courses to take. Some of those high school seniors might have questions about regular decision or the wait list or merit scholarships. Whatever your question is, feel free to post it into the comments section below the live feed. Here we go, our first question coming in for this year's high school seniors. How do you anticipate the changes to the NACAC Code of Ethics affecting the current round of admissions and scholarships? Is there any buzz in the admissions world about how this year will shake out due to the changes? For example, poaching of students, matching of scholarships to keep yield up. We actually got this exact question in our Application Nation Class of 2020 group between 8 and 9 o'clock tonight. So it is a very timely question from Kristen. Here's what's been happening. If you follow along the news about higher education, back in early September, October, NACAC is the national organization that oversees those college counselors and admissions officers. NACAC was forced really to change a policy in place in their code of ethics because the Justice Department was investigating them. And so that code of ethics was really in place to protect high school students so that colleges weren't doing unethical or inappropriate things to get them to apply unfairly, especially if they've already committed to an early decision school. It was put in place to protect them, especially when decisions start going out. And so now that that's no longer in place, I think there are going to be a number of colleges and universities who are going to try to do some crazy things to get students to enroll. Students who already turned them down, students who possibly have been admitted somewhere else or committed to another institution. We're going to start to see some of these colleges doing some of this poaching that this parent is asking about. It is my sense, though, that the poaching or the inappropriate behavior or unethical strategies that are going to be taking place to try to get these students to come on board with them or ultimately enroll is probably going to happen with those colleges that truly struggle to meet their enrollment goals every single year. So every admissions dean has a certain number that they need to reach. They need to bring in a certain number of freshmen every single year. It's the pressure that a dean of admissions feels. And if they don't meet that goal, they then usually go to the wait list. But I think now that that protection is no longer in place for students, I think we're going to start to see a lot of colleges and universities, I would say the less selective ones first, and possibly some of the more selective colleges, especially if they feel threatened and they're not seeing enrollment deposits come in like the way that they used to in the past. So lots of changes afoot, but we just don't know what's going to happen. But I anticipate a lot of poaching, a lot of aggressive behavior on the parts of colleges and universities, especially if they're concerned about their yield rate. Next question. Hello, I'm a proud parent, or I'm a parent of an 8th grader. I know, little early, head start, but what can I start thinking about at this point? Okay, so Nelson, Elizabeth, I am also the parent of an 8th grader. Here are some things that you should be thinking about, and that question gets asked of me almost on a daily basis. So some families are still making a decision about where their child is going to be going to high school. Are they going to be going to their local public high school? Is there a private school option? Some students even consider going away for boarding school and boarding on campus at that particular high school. So right now, I think students are trying to figure out, number one, where they're going to be going for 9th grade. And I really do prefer that the student try as much as possible to stick with that high school for all 4 years of high school, unless it's out of their control, like mom or dad is getting, has a job in another part of the country and they have to move for that reason. But try to make a thoughtful and judicious decision right from the start. So hopefully the student can stay at that high school for all 4 years. When you decide on which high school your child is going to be going to, or your child makes that final decision, you're going to start to get information about classes for 9th grade. That really sets the foundation. So it's not a situation where you can't change the rigor as you go along in high school, but ideally you want to make some smart choices right from the start. There are going to be some exceptions to this rule, but I always encourage students to follow my 5-4 plan. I just did a blog on my 5-4 plan a couple of weeks ago. We'll try to post that link in the comment section below. Basically, the 5-4 plan is, if possible, the student should be taking all 5 core subject matters for all 4 years of high school. Sometimes that doesn't work out. There are going to be some schools, especially a number of Catholic schools across the country, for some reason they don't offer that history or social studies sometimes in 9th grade. But most high schools are going to give students that opportunity to take all 5 core subjects starting off in 9th grade. Those core subjects would be math, English, science, history, and foreign language if possible. Also, be encouraging your child to think about some of the extracurricular activities that they have been doing in middle school and talk to them about what things they want to do in high school. Obviously, there are going to be some activities that follow them through high school, and sometimes they want to change things up, and I think both are fine. For college admissions, it matters what the student does from 9th grade on. So in terms of classes and grades and activities and accomplishments, it really begins. The clock starts ticking essentially for college admissions from 9th grade on. So if they had a rough go in middle school, it's okay. It's a clean slate when they start freshman year of high school. Next question, how do colleges look at the super scored ACT? How many times do you recommend taking the ACT? So Christine, I'm going to start with your second question first. I generally recommend that students take the SAT or the ACT no more than 3 times. The reason for that, there are a couple of reasons actually. Number one, I noticed that the student scores do not go up significantly after 3 times. And there's a lot of pressure put on those tests, and they feel that pressure, and they still have to do well in their classes, which usually matters much more than anything else. So I say up to 3 times, first time being sometime in junior year. Sometimes the student can take it a second time in junior year, or possibly the summer between junior and senior year. And the third and final time, I see the best results on the ACT or SAT at the beginning of senior year. In terms of super scoring, I would say that it's much more common right now that a college would super score the SAT, meaning if the student took the SAT, let's say twice, and they got a high score on the math section but a lower score on the evidence-based reading and writing, and the second time they took it, the reverse happened. Most of the colleges and universities in this country will take the highest math score and the highest evidence-based reading and writing score, even if it happens on 2 separate dates, to create a super scored SAT. There are going to be a number of colleges and universities that will do that for the ACT as well, but not as many. However, I do anticipate that a lot of colleges and universities will be changing their policy about superscoring the ACT. I believe that there will be a lot more colleges and universities superscoring the ACT because the ACT made a big change that will start in the fall. And that means that if a student just wants to take one section of the ACT or a couple of sections instead of the whole test, they're going to be able to do that. That's really going to only help the students that are applying to colleges and universities that superscore the ACT, but I think because of that policy change, we're going to begin to see more students doing that. And I would say just be careful with taking these tests too many times because yes, it's stressful, it puts a lot of pressure on kids, it's expensive, test prep is extremely expensive if you do a class or get a private tutor, but also there are going to be some colleges and universities that require that students submit all of their scores, and when you take these tests 4, 5, 6 times, it tends to not sit well with the admissions officer reading the student's application. Also, a little extra tip, check your child's transcript from their high school. Ask what the official transcript looks like because there are going to be some high schools around the country that will put the student's standardized test scores right on the transcript. So it's important to know this before your child applies. Next question. For senior year schedule, do certain AP classes look better than others to college admissions? For example, does AP Calculus look better than AP Statistics, which is perceived as less rigorous? Great question. I think we get this question every single day by one of our parents on the Application Nation discussion boards. So I would say that AP Calculus is always going to be more respected than AP Statistics, even for the student who wants to apply to business programs, even for the student that wants to have a major related to statistics. AP Calculus is such an important class if a student is applying to some of those more selective programs, whether they want to be a business major or they want to be an English major. Most highly competitive students applying to highly selective colleges are probably going to have, at a minimum, AP Calculus AB senior year, sometimes even beyond that, AP Calculus BC, and AP English. So depending on your high school might offer AP Literature or AP Language, but having AP English and AP Calculus by senior year, really important 2 classes. Obviously, if you're permitted and your high school offers it and you can handle more AP classes, that's a good thing. But if you feel like it's too much, you know yourself better than anyone. Make sure you're not putting so much pressure on yourself for senior year because you still have to do well. Admissions officers are going to see your senior year classes. It's a section on every single application to list your senior year classes. And a lot of times your senior year grades will factor into your final admissions decision. So you want to make sure that the class schedule is appropriate. Colleges only expect you to take 5 core subject matters each year. I know some students are taking 6 cores or 7 cores, but really you just need those 5 cores: math, science, English, foreign language, and history. Next question from Carrie. Hi, Carrie. What are some suggestions for summer for the class of 2024? If the student has a passion for something like working at a car shop because he loves cars and will make money, is that a bad decision if it does not line up with him applying for business programs? Asking for a friend from Application Nation 2020. Okay, awesome. So summer is such a great time to do the things that you don't get a chance to do during the school year. I had a younger family on Application Nation a couple of days ago ask about summer classes. Their student wanted to take academic core classes over the summer at a local university. And I said, it's absolutely not expected. It's not necessary, especially for those high achievers. Admissions officers want to see you doing something besides academic work. So there are a lot of things that you can do over the summertime. If you don't get a chance to do community service during the school year, you might want to do it during the summer because you can devote a lot of time to it. If you have this passion for cars and you can get a job making money doing it, go for it. It's going to be a little bit different than another student having a summer job. Really, anything that you want to do that is important to you, that's meaningful, is going to be celebrated in the application. So if you need to get a summer job to earn money, do it. And that summer job can be scooping ice cream. It can be being a camp counselor. It can be working at a car dealership or an auto shop. It can really be anything. Earning money, having a job is really respected in the admissions process. There are also going to be students kind of doing their own thing. Maybe they have this incredible passion and they want to devote their summer to doing it. Those writers or those poets or those fashion designers, summer gives you a big chunk of time to really devote a lot of hours and weeks to your passion. All of these things can be reflected on the activities list. If you have a responsibility at home, like taking care of your youngest siblings, that's also really important. But be careful. I always talk about this in blogs and Facebook Lives and with my private clients and Application Nation families. Be super, super careful with what I call those pay-to-play programs. Those programs that are happening on college campuses across the country. Some of them are even really selective to get into. I would be very careful with those programs. They cost a lot of money, anywhere from several hundreds of dollars to thousands of dollars. So if you want to spend your summer at Harvard, for example, as a high school student, you're paying between $12,000 and $13,000. And these pay-to-play programs do not go over well with admissions officers, even the admissions officers at that institution. They have nothing to do with these pay-to-play summer programs. So please be careful with that. I think students can have a great experience and learn a lot about themselves and what they want to study in college. I just don't want you listing it on your application or feeling like you have to do it. Next question. Hi, Sarah. I'm a high school junior that wanted to know if it was possible to submit only one of my subject tests for my August subject test sitting. I took 2 tests and did very well on one, but not very well on the other. Thanks for your feedback. All right, so subject tests, what are they? They were called achievement tests back in the day. They were called SAT-2s back in the day, and now they're called subject tests. They're a test offered through the College Board. There are about 20 of them, and you can look at the list. And they're generally only required or recommended for a handful of colleges and universities. There's a whole lot of backlash against these tests because it's just encouraging our kids to be forced to take another test. So you're going to find a handful of colleges, I would say 2 dozen colleges in the country or programs, maybe a couple of really selective engineering programs that are going to require or recommend that the student take subject tests. If 2 or 3 subject tests are required, that's really the expectation. But if it's only recommended and you only have 1 good score, I would only send that 1 good score. And because the only schools and programs that require or highly encourage subject tests are really, really competitive, I would make sure that those scores are super high if you're going to be submitting them to colleges. So I generally say, to be safe, it really has to be a score at a minimum of 700 or higher. The highest score on a subject test is 800, just like a section on the SAT. But really, to be super competitive, if you're submitting subject tests for these highly, highly selective colleges that still require them or recommend them, I really want to see scores 750 or higher. If not, it could hurt you in the admissions process. So if you have a choice and you are not required to submit 2 and you only can submit 1, only send the 1 with a higher score. But great question. Next question. My 10th grader goes to a STEM, where'd it go? We just lost it. Give us a moment and hopefully we'll be able to find that again. In the meantime, hi Mercy, it's good to see you here. I'll probably be able to answer another question for you guys. What about this one? What would you advise high school sophomores to do with their summers pre-college? My daughter's applying to 3 programs at the University of Pennsylvania, has an internship lined up, and is starting to work on SAT prep tutor. Should all of her activities be specific to her upcoming college major? Thank you, Ruth. Okay, so I'm really cautious about those pre-college programs. They're pay-to-play programs. And I used to work at the University of Pennsylvania. I think almost every single one is going to be a pay-to-play program, even though they are highly, highly selective. So I'm going to focus on the ones that are free to students and families. So internships are great, but they're really unusual. Frankly, if a student has an academic interest and they're going to be declaring a certain major on their application and they want more evidence to back up that major, summer's a great time to do it. And I would flood those mentors' email accounts or contact those mentors or people that you know in the field that you want to go into and offer to work for free. Any opportunity to get in that industry or in that field could be very, very helpful. I also think that test prep should begin in the summer between sophomore and junior year. If you start test prep during junior year, it's really, really hard. Junior year tends to be the toughest year of high school, so you're managing this really challenging course load, plus you have to begin test prep. So if you start the test prep during the summer, sometimes you have a little bit of a head start. That doesn't mean that you need to be taking the SAT or ACT in early fall of junior year. The only students that I recommend taking the SAT and ACT for the first time that early in junior year are going to be students who are scoring almost perfect scores on their practice tests on the SAT or ACT. So take your time. You really have plenty of time to take the SAT or ACT once or twice in junior year. As I said, use the summer to test again, a final time, usually in the summer between junior and senior year, or the fall of senior year is when I usually see the best scores possible. Next question from Susan. Hey, Susan, all these familiar faces. How do you feel about my sophomore girl who wants to take 2 science classes next year in lieu of foreign language? She wants to pursue a STEM field. If she takes an accredited online summer course in Spanish, will that suffice for credit of foreign language for foreign language? All right, Susan knows this. She's one of a family that we know really, really well. She knows how important that 5-4 plan is, but her daughter's interested in a STEM field. She might be applying to an engineering program or science major, and she wants to take 2 science classes. I believe her junior year. Sometimes it's tough, especially for those engineering students, because they want to get ahead on physics, but they also maybe want to take AP Chem junior year plus honors physics junior year and possibly take AP Physics senior year. If she decides to take an online class during the summer in Spanish, that might be very helpful. You would just have to send a separate transcript to those colleges, and hopefully that student does really well. An A would be great in that foreign language class taken online. Ideally, though, you want to try to take those classes as much as possible at your traditional high school. If you're going to double up in the sciences or double up in foreign language or double up in history, I would probably do it senior year, because ideally, you're going to try to get that foreign language in at least at the bare minimum freshman, sophomore, and junior year. But taking it online might be another option, Susan. All right, next question. Are the guidelines different for recruited athletes? Whoa, that's a complicated one, Kathy. So recruited athletes, it really depends on whether the student is applying to Division I, Division II, Division III schools, depending on selectivity. But yes, things will vary tremendously for recruited athletes in the admissions process. And you really want to lean on the college coach that is recruiting the student or recruiting your child, because they'll be able to give you some guidance on this. I used to review all of the student athletes that applied to the University of Pennsylvania, but before they even applied as recruited athletes, I did what were called pre-reads during the summer between the student's junior and senior year. So if they were being heavily recruited or being considered by a college coach at Penn, the college coach would ask the student to give them a transcript up until the end of junior year, their senior year classes, and any SAT or ACT or subject tests if they were relevant, because someone in the admissions office, that would be me, would be reviewing the student's transcript, senior year classes, and testing to be able to give some feedback to that student in terms of how competitive the student was, especially if that coach was really interested. And based on that feedback that I would give the coach would relay that information onto the student, or possibly just stop recruiting the student altogether. But there will be variations. For example, if you're applying as a recruited athlete to the Ivy League, there are specific Ivy League rules. If you're looking at, let's say, NESCAC is a highly academic and highly competitive athletic conference in New England for small liberal arts colleges. So you can look up the athletic league and try to get a feel for it. You can also really lean on NCAA. You can register as a student athlete on the NCAA and also get some information on there. So those are a few tips for those recruited athletes. What I saw this year, though, with recruited athletes, especially after Varsity Blues, the admissions scandal, was that there were a lot more restrictions. So a student athlete who was getting recruited might have to submit a non-athletic resume. Sometimes interviews were required, but here's one tip. If you are a recruited athlete and you have to write essays, do not write your essays, any of them, about the sport that you play. Those admissions officers really want to hear more about who you are beyond the sport, because they already see that you're getting recruited and they want to know what other contributions you can make to that college or university, especially if you don't continue playing the sport. Next question, we have time for maybe one or two more questions. If the high school offers an SAT prep course junior year, pass-fail, for one semester, is it frowned upon to take this? My daughter will be taking 2 to 3 AP classes along with this. That's absolutely fine. Some of those suburban high schools, really strong competitive high schools, even the public high schools, will offer a test prep class. You're not going to be getting a grade on it. You might get a pass-fail. It might show up on the transcript. That's absolutely fine. That's absolutely okay to do. But a lot of students have to seek out test prep in their local community or a national company. There are a lot of tutors out there, a lot of classes, and a lot of things online. And sometimes just getting the old-fashioned book and doing it that way can also be helpful. It really depends on how the student learns and how they react to that test prep and those test prep materials. Next question, can a well-rounded student still get into a good college, or does he need to highlight one passion? So we used to say that in college admissions we like well-rounded students and we like well-lopsided students, and I think that's still the case. If you are a student who is involved with a lot of things, that's absolutely okay. However, I would think about, as you go into especially sophomore, junior, and senior year, what are 1, 2, or 3 things that are really, really important to you that you can either get a leadership role in that, maybe you're going to be president of that club or captain of that sport, or B, have a lot of impact in that activity. That activity can be a hobby, it can be an internship, it could be a job after school every day, it could be an academic passion, it could be writing, it could be sewing, it could be really anything. But I would say even if you're involved with a lot of things, I really like students to kind of sink their teeth into 1, 2, or 3 things that are really, really important, because when you're filling out your activities list, and ideally you're doing that in August or September going into senior year, you've got to list things in a special order. I've got a blog for that as well. We'll try to post that. It's probably my most well-read blog, and it's about ordering your activities. You want to put the most important activities toward the top, and my blog from a few years ago will give you some tips, and we'll try to find that and post that into the comment section. Maybe one more question, and we've got to wrap up here. The final question of the night, is it important to be committed to a certain major when you are applying to colleges? Now, you might get varying opinions, and it might not make a whole lot of difference if you're applying to a less selective institution or just a liberal arts large public state university or the liberal arts program at a large state university. But as you consider more selective colleges, and universities, I feel very strongly that the student should commit when they're filling out their application to a specific major. And that major should be the major or the academic area where they've got advanced coursework in it. Maybe they're taking an honors or AP or IB class in that area. They've done exceptionally well in that, so they have evidence to prove that they can perform well in college in that area. Maybe they have an extracurricular activity that matches up with that, that's significant. Maybe a summer experience, maybe one of their teachers that is writing a recommendation letter teaches that same class or that subject matter to the student, and the student did really well. So you just want to make sure that the major or program that you are listing on your application is the strongest area and that you have the evidence to back it up. Because admissions officers, when they open up your application file, they're going to see your name, your address, your test scores, your GPA, and the major or undergraduate program that you're applying to. And based on that, they're going to be reading for different things in your application. They're going to be looking for different things. So it's my belief, just being an admissions officer, being a dean of admissions, being a director of college counseling at a high school, and now as a private counselor, I know that if you list a major and you have the evidence to back it up, it's going to make your application much stronger. So on that note, I encourage you to check out my blogs, download those free resources. Obviously, if you want more interaction with me, you can consider joining Application Nation. We have several groups going on that are accepting new members. Application Nation Class of 2021. We have a younger group, Application Nation. We have an Application Nation Class of 2020 that is wrapping up with great college acceptances. And we have an Application Nation alumni group. We actually have families in 41 states in Application Nation. So I encourage you to check it out because you get interaction and feedback from me on a daily basis. And I'd love to hear from you. If not, join me back here again for our next Facebook Live. I hope that you all have a great night and a great week. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.